Welcome to the first episode of today's electrical estimating. With this series, we're going to be taking a look at how the estimating environment affects all channel partners and vice versa. What's their influence over the estimating environment? I'm your co-host, Chris Traumer, and I am joined with our other host, Sal Huerta. Sal, how is everything going today?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are you doing?
Not bad at all. Thank you so much for joining us and taking part in this whole series that we're going to be providing. I know your decades of experience is definitely going to come in handy as we talk today and going forwards with all of our guests that we'll be having on here. In this episode, like the others coming up, we really want to keep things to the point. To touch on some of the topics we'll be discussing with our future guests, 4 questions. I figure this way everybody can sort of get on board on, the direction we may be going with this series. So, question number 1. True or false? Contractors are the only channel partners who should be concerned with the estimating environment.
Yeah, this is an excellent question, and the answer is actually false. Because what happens is it's kind of a three-prong approach. You have manufacturing, distribution, and contracting. And again, in years past, it might have been siloed to where, yes, it was just one segment only really applied to the others. But technology has changed a lot of that over the years to where now a manufacturer can actually influence what a contractor is looking to put into his estimate. And then, of course, distribution can also assist in what can help them in with the latest, greatest, newest stuff for the contractor to be able to put into his job again. So all three of them actually today do actually need to intermix with each other. The value proposition to all of them is huge.
Yeah, I know with my experience with manufacturers, what we do at Electric Smarts with our Bid Advantage program, I've been talking to manufacturers more and more over the last couple of years, and a lot of them had really no understanding of the space. They weren't really interested in it. They just sort of were lollygag about it. But over the last probably 2 years, I've talked with a lot more companies that have dedicated people that are reaching out to companies, estimating companies to learn more and understand more about their presence. It seems like there has been a big uptick on the manufacturer side of what they can do going forwards to sort of influence this space or to have better presence. All right. Well, number 2, true or false? And I don't know if you hear my dog barking in the background, but if you do, I guess he's really excited about this as well. True or false? All estimating databases were created equal.
So that's false again. What happened was each of these companies and geographically wherever they are located typically added products that they were comfortable with. So if you were in the Southwest, you might have had products that were geared more towards the weather.
Mhm.
Things that you weren't going to have cold related products in there because it wasn't in that area. Granted, if you were in the Northeast, you might not necessarily have earthquake straps. So, each of these databases were created separately, pretty much based upon what the estimating company's database person would put in there. So, again, the second part to that question is there really was no rhyme or reason. They chose items that they know the contractors would need. They didn't go by manufacturer. They got all of one manufacturer's products in there. They might have for 5 different items, half inch, 3/4, 1 inch, that kind of thing. They could have had 3 different manufacturers because the manufacturers didn't necessarily matter to them at that time when they were creating these databases. And again, when we think about this was 30 some years ago, maybe longer, when these databases were being created. So storage space was an issue. The type of information that was being provided had to be shorter. It wasn't like a lot of columns of information. So there was a lot of things that they were limited to in the beginning. Nowadays, obviously, that's different.
And now you're saying 30 years ago when they were sort of created, has there been much change to these databases over time? Have they gone in and updated the products? Have they added new products, removed obsolete products? Because I know with myself working with these manufacturers, we run reports to tell them what products they have in the databases. And they're finding a lot of obsolete products that are still housed there. Basically, did they create these and just said this is what's going to be for the future?
In most cases, correct. You're correct. You remember, these are estimating software programs, and they're really high tech engineering programs.
Yeah.
So the database portion of it was always the afterthought. Okay, so as long as it had some information in there that was pertinent to the job, it wasn't like they're going to manage maintaining it, keep it updated, that kind of stuff. That wasn't what they were creating the database for.
their mainstay was for opposite end of things, that front end engineering portion. The database was just something that came along for the ride, and whatever they had, they sort of had there.
Correct. And so, as you mentioned earlier, obsolete items, or a manufacturer could have come up with a better, newer item,
Yeah.
and they still have the older version still in there because it was never really updated.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I can tell you too, you were saying how these different companies created different databases based off geography and so on and so forth. Looking at a lot of reports for our current partners to give them an insight into where they stand product wise in each database, it really does show. I mean, out of the top 8, one database has 0, the next has 1,100 products, the next has 12, the next has 7, the next 2 have 0. And it's like there's no rhyme or reason. I mean, it's just such a huge difference from 0 to 1,100 when you're looking at these things. All right. Well, number 3, should we go on?
Of course.
All right. True or false? Manufacturers currently have the ability to influence their product's positioning in the estimating databases.
So this is a little bit of a tricky question because the answer for a majority of the companies is no. But the reason I say it's tricky because, of course, you guys at Electric Marts have the ability of doing that. So you're actually one of the only ones that have the ability of influencing what a manufacturer can have within and within the estimating packages databases. So yes, the answer to that part is yes, because you can now, if the manufacturer works with Electric Smarts, will now have the ability of, like you mentioned, seeing what's in these databases. Getting items that might have been older or obsolete, or items that need to be replaced. You guys have the ability now helping work with the manufacturer to make those changes.
My experience with companies that I've talked to that have tried to do this on their own, and they actually hired a person and would call on each of the estimating software companies to see what they can do about removing obsolete products or adding new products into the databases. They were just running into a lot of issues. I mean, first of all, you're having to hire a new person because this isn't a secondary job for somebody. Then some companies would say, no, this is our database. We control exactly what's in this database. Nothing's getting changed from any outside companies. Another might be say, yeah, we'll do it, but it's going to be X amount of dollars. And another company will do it, but it's going to be a different X amount of dollars. But the difference too is that both of them want it in different formats, and you can only put in a certain amount. And it became, with this conversation with this guy, that it just seemed to go on and on with what they were going to have to do, where it became a headache. I mean, the possibility, like you said, is there to go in alone. It is there. That's right. You have the ability to. It just might not be the outcome you're looking for. You might be putting in a lot more work than you anticipated. Is that sort of where you're going with that?
Absolutely. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, is where the database for these estimating packages are down the chain as far as of importance. So they're not going to dedicate a person to go manage and maintain all this data for stuff that contractors have the ability of altering already.
Yeah.
So because of that, it's less importance for them to do that. We understand the manufacturing side is very important to them, but on the contractor side, it's not. And that's where that middle person needs to be in place to liaison between the two. And that's what Electric Smarts does.
So even if a manufacturer did pair up with an estimating software company that said, hey, we'll input your 50 SKUs into our database, that on their to-do list could be 100 items down and be 6 months to a year before they even get around to doing that.
Or longer.
Yep.
Or longer, because again, as a software company like yours, you understand that other projects pop up, other things that are more important pops up, and then all of a sudden that project that was number 10 is now number 90.
Yeah.
These things happen all the time.
So you could be looking at a 24-month ETA before you even get your products in there, at least on some occasions. All right. Well, our last and final, we're trying to keep this to the point so everybody can get back on with their days. True or false? Contractors are stuck with the databases that come with their estimating software.
So again, in the old days, that answer was true because they didn't have the mechanisms to be able to make changes. And what I mean by that is that going into a database and these estimate packages, making these changes is not an easy process. There's probably the minimum of 8 to 10 bits of information you have to put in, and if you don't know these information, I'll give you an example: a UPC number for an item, it becomes a little bit difficult. So initially, again, to answer your question, it was very difficult for a contractor. Nowadays, through the uses of companies like mine, which which is NetPricer, we have the ability of working with the estimating packages where we've written our software into theirs, which now means that when they're in a estimate program and they need items, they can now go out of their estimating package, go into our 2 million item database, grab whatever item they want, and import it into their database now. So now the idea behind that for a contractor and the value to them is that they can now customize the database to what they're looking for. A good example you talked about earlier, if a manufacturer was looking to have their items added into the database, this is one way of doing that for them. But more importantly, they can, if the customer is staff are familiar with installing that manufacturer's products, he can now customize his database more to a manufacturer specific than the old days, which was just content specific.
All right. Well, that's all I got for you today. And that's all I got for you folks today. We really appreciate you joining us, Sal. Always great speaking with you. We hope this gives you some insight into the episodes we're going to be doing moving forwards. We have a lot of great guests coming on board to sort of highlight these points that we've been talking about. Hit the subscribe button, stay up to date when we drop some new episodes. Sal, talk to you soon. Great.
We'll talk to you soon. You got it, buddy.
Everybody. Thank you for joining us on today's electrical estimating, and take care.